Good evening. We'll get started. Actually, the first agenda item, or the next agenda item tonight, is the public hearing to receive comments on the full year 19 amended budget. Anybody wishing to be heard will have an opportunity to present written and/or oral testimony. So I'd like a motion to open up the public hearing, please.
I move to open the public hearing for the fiscal year 19 tentative amended budget.
Second.
Roll call.
By Schultz? Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Michael, mind taking us through the presentation, please?
Sure. This is the FY19 budget presentation. A little bit over $92 million. Local sources at $57 million. And at $10.1 million. The evidence-based funding formula at 6.7.
Yes. So this year, last time, CPI was projected higher than it turned out to be when it fell off the cliff there at the end. Any early, I know we're only into mid-May, but any guesstimation on?
How far?
Yeah.
Spring taxes, so it'll average right around 2%.
Sorry.
What's it gonna be this year?
Yeah, I mean,
I'll let you know.
yeah, I mean, like I said, we're only yeah, I mean, is it the same trend as we were at this time last year?
The last time I looked, it was right around the 1.7 to 2.
Ball game here.
Higher now because gas prices have been running up. That's what killed it at the end of the fourth quarter. Gas prices tanked. Now they're running up again, so I'd say if you looked at it right this minute, it's probably higher than it was in March. But does
Of electronics and the current kind of tariffs and everything else, especially, you might see something, but I would be guessing.
oh, we're gonna remember.
Receive written testimony that I would ask at this time. Nobody signed up, but if anybody in the audience would like to address the board in regards to the budget, now would be the time to do so. Okay. So all persons desiring to be heard have been given the opportunity to present written or oral testimony with respect to the fiscal year 19 tentative amended budget. This fiscal year 19 tentative amended budget has been placed on tonight's agenda, the May 14th, 2019 regular Board of Education meeting, as an action item. Can I have a motion to adjourn the public hearing, please?
I move to close the public hearing for fiscal year 19 tentative amended budget.
Second.
Roll call.
Motion by Wall, second by Wilson. Mr. Schultz?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. DeMonte?
Yes.
Mrs. Beals? Yes. Mrs. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Walls?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. I do not have any suggested changes. If anybody else has any, otherwise I need a motion.
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Roll call.
Motion by Schultz, second by Anderson. Mrs. Wilson?
Yes.
Mrs. Beals?
Yes.
Mr. DeMonte?
Yes.
Mr. Walls?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Schultz?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
7 yes. Motion carries.
Next item is reception of the visitors. This is the opportunity for people to address the board in the form of a 3-minute statement. And I do have 3 people that signed up. First person on the list is Chloe Calzano.
Yes, you can come up as a group.
You can come up as a group. Chloe, Brandon Olson, and Anita Madura. Andrina. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate your comments. President's report. The only thing I wanted to bring back up, just a brief conversation tonight, was the idea that Mr. Walls brought up at the last meeting around having a second open public comment section towards the end of the meeting. And I think it's a perfectly fine idea. I think if we did something towards the end of the meeting, somebody might hear something during the meeting that spawns them to want to make a comment. How would you feel about starting it kind of on a trial basis, maybe in June, and we'll put it on the agenda and we'll see how it goes. We don't get a ton of public comments, but maybe if we have a session later.
Sure, I
in the
mean,
meeting.
you know, this time here is usually 3 minutes at the front. You know, if you wanted to shorten it to 2 minutes or however you wanted to deviate, but yeah, it would be more than, I mean, that'd be great.
I think it's a good idea.
That'd be an
I'd probably just ask anybody in the audience if they want to make a comment. I do that anyway, even when people don't sign up. Sometimes, people don't know, and if I grab the book and then they want to say something, they'd have to come steal it from me and sign up. So I'll just prompt the audience at that time if they want to add a comment or two. Okay? Good. Dr. Algram, committee reports?
Thank you, Ed. A few committee reports that we want to report out on. First off, we did have our Finance Committee meeting back on April the 30th, and at that meeting, it was nice that Ms. Beals and Mr. DeMonte were able to join Mr. Schultz at that meeting. It allowed Mike to go over that presentation that he just went over with the board as kind of a preview to our amended budget, but I think it also allowed them to ask some questions tangential to the presentation, but obviously directed at our budget that helped them learn along. There's a ongoing process that, for all of us in terms of trying to ask the right questions in regards to our budgeting process. So that's what we did at our Finance Committee meeting on April the 30th, and then we had a Safety Committee on May 1st, Pat?
On to the super.
Speaking of committees, so maybe it'll help the board as a just kind of a reminder of where we're at in terms of the time now with new board members. The board eventually will need to be reconfigured onto our committees, both our standing committees and our ad hoc committees. Gene and I were working today on kind of a document that we have that's kind of a list of what we've done up till now. It doesn't mean that will stay that way forever, but maybe we'll send that out in our weekly letter at the end of this week, just so that all the members can kind of review again of what committees we have generally, how often they meet, when they meet, because some things are a little bit more tied to after school as opposed to those committees that are at night. So it might give the board a flavor of all the committees, so when we do get to the point of either reassigning or people volunteering back on committees, you'll have an idea of that. So that may be helpful. We'll send that out in a weekly letter. We also had, just as that time frame, I'm thinking ahead now to our June meetings. We have our next meeting on May the 28th, so that'll be our second May meeting, and we have a lot of kind of business to take care of at that meeting. The meeting after that is our June 11th meeting. That's our strategic planning session. So if you remember, we moved that in the summer so that we could use the summer to help us plan. So that's on June the 11th. We are going to have a 5:30 board meeting, have food in there, and then have a 6:30 or 6 to 8:30 kind of time frame for our strategic plan. And so I'm imagining then, and our board meeting that night is just business items, generally our consent agenda. We've tried to keep it to maybe one or two other items, but that night's very important for us. Obviously, we had a meeting today, kind of a prep meeting for that meeting, and obviously our administrative team is hungry to get working on that process. So that's on June the 11th. And we will, the other thing that I wanted to make sure the board was aware, first off, for Sunday, we mentioned it earlier, Sunday's graduation. It's great that it seems like everyone will be there, and we start at 11 o'clock at the Sears Center. For those of you that are taking the school transport, it'll leave Eau Plaine at 9 o'clock. If you're not, if anything changes last minute, just please make sure you connect with Jean and I on just what your plans are so we can know to meet you down there. But I think 10:15 is what we had. I hope that all board members would kind of be configuring down there if you're driving on your own anyway. And trying to think, we did have 2 FOIAs come in since our last meeting. One was from a Chris Lamphere, who wanted a list of our vendor contracts, and another one was from a Samir Samant, who wanted a copy of all of our transportation contracts that we have with other vendors. So those were the 2 FOIAs that came in since our last meeting, and that's the end of my report.
Thank you, Dr. Allen. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. We have 3 items in there. We are going to make a slight change to the draft of the meeting minutes. It actually had Bensy and Tony listed as absent in closed session, but you hadn't taken the oath yet, so you wouldn't be absent. And we're going to, and technically, I guess Steve and Barb would have been absent, which they were. So we'll make that change to the draft. But I'm going to go ahead and okay, so the action doesn't line up to our consent agenda item. Oh, sorry, I'm on the wrong line. My bad. I move to approve the consent agenda items as presented, consisting of the hiring recommendations numbered 173 through 187 as posted, the payment of the bills in the amount of $584,258.85, and the regular meeting minutes and executive session minutes of April 23rd, 2019.
Second.
Roll call.
Motion by Drake, second by Will.
Yes.
Yes.
Walls?
Yes.
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 Yes. First item under new business is the approval of the 2019-2020 District Consolidated Grant Plan.
Process the federal grants this year, so we have to bring forward, they basically, the Title I, Title II, 3, 4, and IDEA grants are now all part of a consolidated grant plan for the district. Next year, ISB will launch in February an interactive dashboard, and then beginning in next year at this time, we'll be filing all of our federal grants under one consolidated application. This is because there's a lot of redundancy between all the different applications, so we had to kind of refile our grant plan, so basically taking our plans from Title I, which the board has approved 2 or 3 years ago with Willie, our IDEA grant plan, and then the work we do for our Title III, and put that all into one document to submit to ISB. So this is, the board would approve our grant plan this year, and then we would be working under that plan moving forward, so just making minor adjustments.
Move to approve the 2019-2020 District Consolidated Grant Plan as presented.
Second.
Roll call.
Second by Walls. Mrs. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Schultz,
Yes.
Mr. Demonte,
Yes.
Mrs. Beals,
Yes.
Mr. Walls,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Drake. 7 yes, motion carries.
Item under new business, approval of the employees with 2020 school. I move to approve the administrators and non-union IMRF employees with contracts for the 2019-2020 school year.
Second.
Roll call.
Motion by Drake, second by Schultz. Mr. Walls. Mrs. Wilson.
Yes.
Mrs. Beals.
Yes.
Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
Mr. Demonte.
Yes.
Mr. Schultz.
Yes.
Mr. Drake.
Yes.
7 yes, motion carries.
Last item under new business is approval of the purchase of servers and network storage solution for the Almond and Eau Plaine campuses. This was based on that study and recommendation. Yeah.
Yes. So, actually, this is the safety study, or, okay, sorry.
I thought there was a network.
Oh, yeah, so we've
a
been
we
working
had-
through, like,
yeah.
our needs assessment and where we're at with our older parts of our infrastructure, and this is the next big piece. We had the firewall that we brought forward back in April, and this is more about our data centers. So this houses, like, all of our key applications, our network storage, and right now our devices are anywhere from 7 to 11 years old. They can no longer move onto current versions of Windows Server Edition, so we need to do a major refresh. And so this is the next major project. There were 3 major projects for FY20 that I kind of highlighted on the memo. But this one, we selected Nutanix. Nutanix is a leader in this emerging market for data centers. They, out of all the vendors that we looked at, they were able to best meet our needs, allow us to get some disaster recovery and network backups up in the cloud. It's going to allow us to move a lot of applications that are currently housed at Eau Plaine, move them over to the Almond campus to get them out of risk of flooding on an annual basis. So we're very excited about being able to work with this product, and we've spoken with some school districts and working with our consulting firm to make sure that we were selecting the best product for our needs, and we're very excited about this product. So.
They offer then, they'll be the ones that support the system
They-
ongoing, or does that fall under our?
Our
Other
consulting firm will work with Nutanix to help us with the initial installation, and then we have a 4-year service agreement directly with Nutanix, where they actually monitor our systems and will notify us proactively if they see something that's starting to not operate. And we also have constructed the solution to handle if one of the parts of the system that's at Almond starts to fail, there's still room for it to move into another part. And then if Eau Plaine, something happens with Eau Plaine, we are able to move about 70% of Eau Plaine over to Almond in an emergency.
Does it need a motion?
I move to approve the purchase of $128,000 with the Almond and Eau Plaine.
Second.
Motion by Wilson. Beals.
Yes.
Walls.
Yes.
Schultz.
Yes.
Yes.
Demonte.
Yes. Yes. Last item, and under old business, is approval of the fiscal year 19 tentative amended budget that Mike presented to us earlier. Anybody have any other questions? I move to approve the fiscal year 19 tentative amended budget as presented.
Second.
Roll call.
By Schultz.
Yes.
Wilson.
Yes. Yes.
Walls.
Yes.
Mr. Demonte. Mr. Schultz.
Yes.
Mr. Drake. 7 yes, motion carries.
Adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Roll call.
By Drake, second by Wilson. Mr. Schultz.
Yes.
Mr. Demonte.
Yes.
Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
Mrs. Beals.
Yes.
Mr. Walls. Mrs. Wilson.
Yes.
And Mr. Drake.
Yes.
7 yes, motion
Remember, everybody, we got some signatures, so no